Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bronwyn Starr, and I'm with the New York State Health Foundation. And today I'm joined by Liz Ackles, the Executive Director of Community Food Advocates. And today we're going to have a little chat about school lunch in New York City during COVID. When we originally scheduled this event, we thought school would be well underway, but here we are just on day 2. And many of you, including myself, have probably been running around all morning troubleshooting remote learning. But have no fear, this webinar is being recorded and you'll have a chance to view it at another time if you need to step away during the broadcast. Video and audio for all you attendees is disabled, but any questions or comments you have throughout the presentation, please feel free to put into the chat box and we will have time at the end for questions and answers. So this half an hour is going to go by very fast, so I'm just going to have Liz jump right in and turn it over to you, Liz.
Thank you. Thanks, Bronwyn. Thanks for providing this forum for us today. So I'm going to start by just giving a little background on where we are, how we got to where we are right now before I go into this upcoming school year. So the backstory is in March when schools closed, New York City school food had an emergency response where they very immediately went into a food hub grab and go model. And so there were at its peak about 520 sites throughout the city where people could get, for children and adults, 3 meals a day, a lunch and 2 breakfasts, and 5 days a week without documentation, identification, or anything. One of the reasons that this was possible is that the federal government in March provided waivers to the normal rules that guide the school lunch program about children having to register in school in order to get the meals. So they put into place what's called the summer meals model, which is a much more fluid and easy way and less burdensome for districts to get meals. So that's where we are. There were about 520 sites at its peak and 600,000 meals being served daily. New York City also had and continues to have a commitment to ensuring that adults can access meals, which is really critical and not what happened in every school district. So that's where everyone in the household could just get meals, 3 meals a day. So that's kind of the backstory. Going into this school year, thankfully the federal government late, but thankfully extended the waivers. So the summer meals model of service will continue through at least at this point the end of December. So why that's important is that it doesn't require a child to be registered in a school as we previously thought was going to happen in this school year. So on September 29th, if school opening stays as it is, so it was supposed to be the 21st, so now that shifts. So it's when schools are all schools are open. We're shifting to a model that, first of all, for students in schools, they will all receive either grab and go meals at breakfast and lunch that they'll take and eat in the classroom, or for some of the younger students, there'll be meals delivered to the classroom. That's really important that that's happening. They're not using cafeterias for eating. It will be in the classroom. The meals will be cold meals at this point because that's what they can do and meet food safety standards, although they're looking into some hot options because they know that parents and children would like that. So it's kind of simple for when students are in schools. It's going to be grab and go or delivery to the classroom. Where it gets there's a little bit more to it is when students are remote, or if their families have food needs, food needs even when they're in school. So the city is expanding they're calling them to-go meals, not the grab and go, because that's what's happening in the schools, to almost all 1,400 school buildings. Not every single one, but most. We're actually gonna put some slides up. So if we can just start with the first slide, and go to the next one. Yep. So so we're gonna talk about, as mentioned, school meals when students are in schools, the grab and go or to-go meals when students are remote or their families have needs, and then adult-only households pick up. So if you could advance, please. Okay, so again, this is pretty straightforward. In schools, it's going to be food delivered to classrooms, pickup stations. Cafeteria spaces are likely to be used for other activities, including, classroom space and that kind of stuff. So that's the safest way they can serve, is in the classrooms. Next slide. So when children are remote and other times households need food, so this is an important point that I really want to emphasize. There'll be close to 1,400 sites throughout the city, and this is for students and everyone in their household. So it's not just for the kids. This is both the waiver that has come through and the city's commitment to ensuring that adults also can eat. So there'll be roughly 1,400 sites at almost every school. There'll be 3 meals a day. So it's a breakfast and 2 lunches. That's similar to what they're providing now. A child or a family does not have to go to the school that their child is registered in. It's any school that's most convenient. Anyone can go to pick up the meals for the family, a parent, a guardian, another child in the household, a friend, a neighbor. All you have to do, similar to what's been in place since March, is say, I'm here to pick up so many adult meals and so many children's meals. Most importantly, there's no registration and there's no identification or documentation needed. So no one will be asked for any kind of information like that, which is a very big deal, especially for immigrant households who may not have other options and may have reservations about going to places where they need to identify themselves. Pickup will be from 9 a.m. to noon, and that is to avoid when kids are going into schools and when they're being released from schools, to keep the flow. And it will be similar to how it is now, where it's in the entry of the building and there's a setup there. So the one thing I want to make sure to be clear about is, again, we're saying when children are learning remotely, and that's probably how the Department of Education is going to talk about it. But remember, this is not just for the child, but it's for the entire household needs. So even if a child is in school and getting meals there, if there's food needs for that child when they get home, and there's food needs for the family otherwise, they can go, no questions asked. So the big takeaway, we're going from roughly 400 sites now that the Department of Education has been running since the beginning of the summer, to almost 1,400 sites for children and their families. Next slide, please. The other big shift is that instead of every site being open to, for lack of a better term, adult-only households, there are going to be 200 sites throughout the city, and that they're going to be targeted sites service for those meals, it will be 3 meals per day per person, will be 3 to 5 p.m. There'll be no registration, identification, documentation needed, no questions asked. A person can pick up for themselves and anyone else in their households or anyone else that they want to get out and maybe a friend or neighbor. So this is going to be, whereas the sites for households with children is going to expand dramatically, threefold likely. This is going to be, sites are going to be cut in half. The city, for adult only households, and it's going to be later in the day. So again, the city has a commitment to serving adults, which is 5 days a week, 3 meals a day, pretty extraordinary. But we're going to be keeping an eye on this because we want to make sure that it's meeting the needs, because we know the need is great. The way these sites were determined is the Department of Education, who's serving adult meals as well, looked at sites with the largest uptake, and then also looked at the home delivered meals program that the city has been running to see where there's the greatest need. So those are the essential elements to know. Again, meals are being served cold. The reason that is happening is because Department of Education's one of their primary concerns is food safety. Once something is heated, there's a very short window of time to deliver meals that are hot and avoid foodborne illnesses. Some of the grab and go, some of the takeout meals now that they're doing have pizza kits and other kinds of things that they're trying to test that families seem to be enjoying. So they're going to continue to do that. So that's the end of the slide presentation. And just to say, at Community Food Advocates, one of the things that we do with our Lunch for Learning Coalition is we're tracking all of this very closely. And we work with our partners to both get the word out, because even though, there's always a lot of confusion when there's a change like this. And we hear from folks all over the city about what's happening at particular sites, identify issues that are coming up, identify system-wide issues, and work very closely with the Department of Education Office of Food and Nutrition Services to address concerns. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that, Liz. I want to reiterate that you guys have been literally on the ground when adults and kids have been coming all summer to pick up meals, trying to do real-time troubleshooting directly to DOE. So you are like the direct line, basically, from people who are coming to pick up the food to the Office of School Food.
Yes, thank you.
A lot. A couple of clarifications that have come in just as you were chatting about the adult-only meals, and those sites have gone from 400 sites to 200 sites. Someone was asking where those 200 schools are, and I know on your website there is a map, so I'm going to let you explain a little bit more.
Yeah, so just remember, there are 400 sites now for everyone until September 29th, right? So if you go to our website at communityfoodadvocatesnyc.org, there's a searchable map there, including halal and kosher sites that are listed specifically. So all of the sites until September 29th, I'm sorry, September 25th is when that model will end. You can find on our website. We don't yet have the list of the schools and the adult-only sites. We will get them as soon as the Department of Education makes them public. And for the children with families locations, it will be on the DOE sites. For the adult-only locations, it will be on the Get Food NYC site. And once we get that, we'll take that and put that all of those together, identify them and do a searchable map on the Community Food Advocates site, which, you know, has gotten a lot of traffic. So the sites have not yet been released. And once we have them, we'll get them up. And the current model of 400 sites will end on the 25th, and the new model is scheduled to kick in on the 29th.
Okay, thank you. Then the 25th is this Friday, so
yes,
this Friday.
Yes, it is. Yes.
The 29th. Okay. I also wanted to ask you if you, right now, it's really virtually impossible to plan for things, but what happens after December? You, as an advocacy organization, I'm sure you're thinking about that.
Yep.
Do you have any insight or ideas about when the waiver ends? Are there different scenarios where kids would still get meals, but adults don't? And what can we as viewers do to help you as an advocacy organization to get the waiver extended? Yeah,
so the waiver really relies on the USDA extending the waiver. The US Department of Agriculture is the federal administering agency of school meals programs. So there are big efforts to get it extended through the school year and even the following school year, because there are many school districts who are struggling with this right now. And so what would happen, worst case scenario, is what the city was planning before the waiver was extended. And what that is that children would have to be registered in schools to get the meals. So it would be whatever school the child's registered in, and the city then also started up a system that they have since suspended of parents being able to register their children to pick up meals or themselves pick up meals at any school that's closest to them. So you can see the difference of administering that program is pretty drastically different. The city seems to be clearly committed to making sure adults, both with children and without, can get meals. So even if that gets changed, I can't speak for them, but I'm assuming they'll provide opportunities where, how it works is that the city doesn't get reimbursed for the adult meals. They get reimbursed for the children's meals. So that's all how it works. If the waiver expires, then they'll only get reimbursed for the meals of children registered in schools. And that's rather than, 0 through to the 19th birthday. So, there are lots of efforts around to get USDA to extend this out. And, we could always share links and calling members of Congress to have them weigh in on this and weigh in on with the USDA and make sure this process is extended out. The other benefit, we already have universal free school lunch in New York City, but for other school districts, the waiver means that there's national universal free school lunch right now.
And can you comment a little bit more on that? And if there's a there in terms of thinking about, you guys worked so hard for several years to get universal school lunch made a reality here in the city, but what about parts of the rest of the state that don't have it, or the country? Are you part of some network? Are you guys, is this even on the table?
Yeah. The Urban School Food Alliance is working with, which is made up, among other groups, made up of the largest school food districts in the country. And they are working with Representative Bobby Scott, who has a bill for universal free school lunch through the end of the school year. But their efforts to try to just, the pandemic has kind of shined a light on the need for universal free school lunch going forward. That it's easier to administer, it will get more kids eating. It's just a much simpler way to do it. So there, I don't have the bill number, but there is Representative Bobby Scott has a free school lunch for all bill before Congress.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Another question, which is switching gears a little bit, but this is still, I know, something you guys have been thinking about, and you have resources on your website, the pandemic EBT cards.
Yes.
These are separate from grab and go meals,
Yep.
but if you could give a little bit of a background on
Sure.
what they are and how folks can use them.
Yeah, sure. So in one of the first stimulus packages, the Families First Coronavirus Act, there was built into that stimulus package was something called pandemic EBT. And the idea of pandemic EBT was to provide stimulus funds to families whose children were out of school and not able to access school meals. So in New York City, it covers between March 16th and June 25th. It's $5.70 a day because that's what the federal government reimburses for breakfast and a lunch. And that comes to cover those months to $420. So because we have universal free school lunch in New York City, and this is nationally, what that means is it's to cover children who are eligible for free and reduced priced lunch nationally. Because New York City has universal free school lunch, every single student is eligible. And we've been doing a lot of work to get so it basically comes in, depending on these 3 waves of implementation for households who the first wave was households who receive food stamps or SNAP and public assistance. The second wave was households enrolled in Medicaid. And the third wave, which we're in now, is for people who are not currently, households who are not currently enrolled in those programs. So the state who is administering the program and has gotten this up and running they got it up and running in weeks, and it's impacts 2.1 million children in the state, which almost $1 billion in federal funds coming into the state, and again, all 1.1 million New York City public school students, and that's 475 million of that is federal funds coming into New York City. And the purpose is to serve both, put grocery money in the pockets of families, and also provide money to stimulate the local economy. So basically, it's not the food stamp program. It's a separate program, but in many ways acts like that. It comes on an EBT card, and you can purchase food. It's valid for a year. Purchase food, not hot and not prepared foods, but grocery items. And we've been doing a lot of work around this. People are very confused. There's a tremendous amount of anxiety. We've heard from so many people, both people who are low income and also many middle income families who are struggling to make ends meet and are awaiting the $420. This is something also that it's not looking very promising at the moment, but we hope will be extended to the next school year, because schools are still opening, either not opening all remote or hybrid, and we're hoping that Congress finds it in their hearts to along with other stimulus that's needed to extend this program.
Great. We did have a question, and as an organization, we've had some of these questions come in too. What can people do if they haven't received their EBT card?
So I'll give you the most direct answer is that all New York City public school students should currently be registered with the state agency. It's OTDA are the initials, Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance, should be registered. So even if there's a problem getting the cards right now, so we're encouraging people to call their helpline, which I wish I had the number right in front of me and I don't, but I could share that with you, to to check to make sure the children are registered. Almost every New York City public school student should be registered. There are also parochial and charter schools who participate in the National School Lunch Program. And children in those schools should also be eligible. But that registration in the system is being delayed. So I'd call the helpline to find out the status and ensure that the children are registered. Thank you, Anna. I see you put the number up. And frankly, if a child is not registered in the system, we don't have, at this moment, a remedy for that. We are pushing the state to figure out a plan, because it's between now and September 30th where children who are not registered need to be registered. It's a federal requirement. So we're trying to push the state state ed department to have some mechanism to resolve registration problems. But just so the number that is listed here in the chat from my colleague Anna Ariza is 833-452-0096. That's 833-452-0096. That's the OTDA helpline. And if you're looking to speak to a representative, if they ask for answer what language you want, push that button, and then just hold on if you want to speak to someone. That's our best advice to getting through to a representative. They had been telling folks that they needed to receive a letter in order to speak with someone there to get issues resolved. They have since stopped that. So
they have definitely worked out some of the kinks. So
yes.
That's good.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think we're at time. Like I said, the half hour flew by. Yes. Liz, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to come talk to us. Everyone who's tuned in, thank you so much for taking the time. And again, a recap will be available in the next day or so. We will include these additional resources of the OTDA number, potentially a map of schools or when you can expect that. Yes. Yeah, so please follow up with any questions after, and thank you all again. Have a great day.
Thank you, Bronwyn.